Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Learning Live at HID Academy. I hope you're having a good day or a good evening or even a good morning, depending on where you are in the world. We've got viewers on both YouTube and on LinkedIn, so hi to everyone there. I'll be telling you how you can interact with us during this live stream in just a moment. Before I do, can I just, if you don't mind, if you haven't already, if you could give us a like and a subscribe, as they say in these circles. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoy what we're doing, and do make sure that you comment, which I'll tell you about in just a moment. If you haven't already subscribed to either our YouTube channel or to our LinkedIn page, please do, because then you get all these notifications of all the live streams that we're doing and other great content, learning content, training videos, all that kind of stuff. And of course, if you know somebody in your business that might benefit from watching something like this, then please do share the link to your colleagues and let them know and get them involved. Now then, as I said, you will be able to ask questions and comment throughout the video, and you can do that in either the LinkedIn chat or the YouTube chat, and they're the two platforms we're broadcasting on. So please do send in your comments and questions. But can I ask one small favor? When you do, can you just stick a big capital Q at the front of your question and make sure that there's a question mark at the end, and that just helps my system sort it from the rest and put it into the right box so that I can go and get it. What we will do is we will save pretty much all of the questions until the end of the stream, and we'll answer them then, unless of course there's something that's really poignant and pertinent to the thing that we're talking about, and then we'll bring those in as and when, if we think that will actually add to the flow of the content. So questions are very, very welcome. Please do send them in. And of course, if you're watching this on catch up, hello, how is it in the past there? I hope everything's okay. We will try and answer your questions, so do still please send them in to us either in the comment section underneath the video, or you can send them in via email to training@hidglobal.com, and one of the Academy team will be able to take that, and if we can't answer it ourselves, we'll pass it on to the guys that are on the show today, and we'll get an answer to you ASAP. Don't forget that you can access all of HID Global's training at hidglobal.com/training, and all the Academy content is there. There's hundreds, literally hundreds and hundreds of modules, certification courses, videos, how-to guides, guidebooks, all sorts of things. There's even a brilliant community application in there where you can join in and talk. It's kind of like a social media thing, but you can join in and talk with your peers and also Academy members as well. So do head over and sign up for that if you haven't already. And of course, if you're already watching us on YouTube, you'll know this address, but here is our YouTube channel if you want to go and check us out there. So that's enough of all of that stuff. It's about time we introduced everyone that we've got on the show today. So today we're going to be talking about best practices for cybersecure and modern access control, and the components and parts and things we have to think about and consider in that. And obviously I don't know all the good stuff about that, but we do have two great people who will tell us all about those things. But before we get to them, let me just bring in my colleague Iain Christie, who is the technical training guy, sales training guy for PAX from Academy, and he'll be kind of leading the conversation today. So hi Iain, how are you?
Hello, fine, thank you Rob, and thank you for that glowing introduction. I'm an instructor with the Academy, as Rob has said, and I'm concerned with physical access control systems. So I'm very happy to introduce today Phil Coppola and Jeremy Fromm, who are going to be discussing the subject. So guys, could I ask you, perhaps Phil, start off by giving us a brief introduction, then move on to Jeremy.
Well, hello everybody. My name is Phil Coppola. I am the mobile evangelist at HID. I am also the director of end user business development for our mobile solutions team. It's myself and three other individuals that wake up every day, and we eat, sleep, and breathe HID mobile access. I'm really excited to be here. If you're not following me on LinkedIn, you really should. What are you even doing here? Connect with me on LinkedIn and YouTube. I post tons of content about mobile access that hopefully you'll find interesting and educational.
Thank you, Phil. How about Jeremy?
How do I top that? So I'm Jeremy Fromm, and I'm not the mobile evangelist. I'm the Mercury evangelist. I don't even know what I do. Um, this is bad. What a start. I wake up every day and I talk about Mercury. So if you have any questions about Mercury and really what we're seeing, there's a huge cyber play, and that's what we'll be talking about today. But Mercury gives customers options and choice and freedom across many different platforms. I also do YouTube content, the Mercury Minutes. So sign up there, and hopefully that information is beneficial and educational.
Fantastic stuff. Just before we get into the meat and bones of this, just want to say hi to a few people in the chat who are already leaving us some great messages. Looking forward to a great discussion on best practices. Hello from Norway. Hello, Norway. How are you? Hope everything's good over there. And hello to Sahil from India. So we've got a truly global audience today. So that's really cool. Hello to everyone else. And as I said, don't forget, leave us your chat, your questions, your conversations, and if you've got anything that we can answer, we will endeavour to do so. So I'm going to take a back seat and I'll manage all the bits behind the scenes. I'll hand over to Iain now, who will kind of lead the discussion through for the rest of the session. So over to you, Iain.
Thank you very much, Rob. Right, before we get started in the main topic, there's a couple of things that we need to learn about or make sure that everyone knows about. And that's the Advanced Encryption Standard and Transport Layer Security over Ethernet. So, guys, could you just give us a quick overview of the principles behind these two standards so that we can understand what you're talking about later on?
Yeah, I can take that. And what we'll see if you look at the overall picture of an access control system and you start at your reader and the reader communicates to the credential, obviously there's COS and Desfire and mobile fall into that. The reader then communicates with your controllers and those communicate out to your access control system. And what we want is full end-to-end encryption, because if there's a missing component that is not encrypted at any part of this chain, then you expose yourself to vulnerabilities. And what you'll see is AES encryption is throughout all of this. And it's throughout pretty much everything we use in our personal lives every day. When you log into websites and banking, and it's using a level of AES encryption, and we use the same thing here. So AES, all it is really simply, it is symmetric encryption, which means we have an encryption key or a password, and both sides of that communication, they need to know that key. So think about your Wi-Fi router that has a password or a key. And when you connect your laptop or your phone to your Wi-Fi, it also has that same key. So we have plain text that gets encrypted with the key that passes over the network. And if somebody grabs that information, they really can't do anything with it because it's encrypted. And then when the receiver gets it, they decrypt it with that same key and they're able to see the message. So very simply, it's way more complex than that, but very simply, that's what AES is. And typically we're talking AES 128 or AES 256, and that's just the number of characters in that password. So you have 128 letters and numbers and special characters, or 256. So AES is incredibly strong, and it takes an incredible amount of time to break AES. Rob, if you go to that next slide, there is an example of what this looks like. So, go one more ahead. There you go. Perfect. Thank you. So if we look at AES 256, and I think this just maybe puts it into perspective of how secure AES 256 really is. If you take every possible combination of passwords that there could be, so all combinations of letters and numbers and special characters, that gives you 110 quadrivigintillion possibilities. And that means it's going to be really hard to guess. That's roughly equal to the number of particles that there are in the universe. So it's a massive, massive number. The world's fastest computer today, and this isn't quantum computing, but the world's fastest computer today can try a brute force attack, or can try to guess 93 quadrillion times every single second. And it will say, I tried 93 quadrillion, I didn't guess it. And then the next second it will try 93 quadrillion and it didn't guess it. And it will continue doing that. And in order for it to go through that full 110 quadrivigintillion, it would take that computer 37.5 sextillion years. Now, all of us are probably like, hey, Phil, do you know how long 37.5 sextillion years are? Of course you don't. putting it into perspective, the Earth, we're going to get eaten up by the sun in 5.4 billion years. So look, that fastest computer, that's the least of our worries at this point. I'm worrying about the sun if it's me. Quantum computing, it's going to flip this all upside down. But what we use with AES is really secure, and I think that's the point.
Well, and if I could just bear down on that point for just a quick second, because there's AES 128 and there's AES 256, and there's certain pieces and components that HID leverages that only use AES 128. And to put that into perspective, like what Jeremy's showing here with 256, if you wanted to brute force AES 128, it would take you somewhere in the vicinity of 1 billion years. So not quite enough to eat the Earth, but I don't think any of us will be here for it. So, you know, when it comes to AES encryption, whether it's 128 or 256, yeah, I feel like that there's a lot of there's a marketing term called FUD, which stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And people will say, "Oh, only AES 128," or "Oh, you're using AES. That's a symmetric key system. That's not secure." Well, do you have 1 billion years? Okay. If you don't, yeah, and I think where some of that is coming from also is like, oh, well, it's a password. So maybe I'll be able to guess the password, or somebody will be able to give me the password. Yeah, I could give you the password. It's a string of 128 random letters and numbers. Nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing that.
That's right. Yeah, and if we think back to that first slide where we showed AES 128 and 256, it would be improbable. I think that's the right word to use. Improbable that somebody would ever guess that. It's not impossible, but it's
highly
improbable.
Unlikely. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the very end of that, we talked a little bit about TLS. So TLS is a component of this, and normally there's some animation here, but we're going to ignore the animation. So really all this is there's a private key and a public key with TLS. So it's asymmetric encryption. It's what we call PKI. And that private key, that never gets shared with anybody. That lives in the access control world on the controller. And the public key, that does get shared. And the public key is what's used to encrypt things. So if I were to walk through this process in TLS, it would basically be the access control system initiates a conversation with the controller. The controller would pass over the public key, and then the access control system would utilize that public key to encrypt its AES 256 session key. Now so it creates this AES key, and then it encrypts it. So that AES key is our encryption key that we're going to use for all communication. But we need to pass it to the controller. We need to share that somehow. So we do that with encrypting it with the public key. And then once the controller gets this encrypted packet of data, it can use the private key to decrypt that. So that enables us to share our encryption keys in a way, because otherwise I'm just like, hey, Phil, our encryption key is 72 today. And everybody in Norway and India now knows that our encryption key is 72. So TLS allows us to securely communicate what our encryption keys are. And TLS 1.3 is the version that's secure today.
And Jeremy, is that over the network, or is that over?
That's all network. That's right.
Yeah.
So TLS is specific to network communication, 100%.
And I'll just to add a little bit of color commentary here. There's a reason why Mercury panels have evolved over the course of time, right? They were the SCP, and then the EP, and then the LP, and the MP. With the MP series now, and Jeremy's going to talk way more about this and more knowledgeably than I ever can. But with the MP series, you have the ability to now have the best version of TLS. In subsequent versions, right, when we were hanging EP 1501s, 1502s on the wall of a data closet 10 or 15 years ago, the best thing that we could offer at that time, I think, Jeremy, and correct me if I'm wrong, was like TLS 1.1, but it wasn't upgradable. You couldn't upgrade that. So now you have organizations that have adopted TLS 1.3 at the end user level. The IT departments are saying, we want the most secure, most robust network security out there. And yet we have the older version running in a closet somewhere that's non-upgradable. So as the threat vectors change, right, we were concerned about our access control system 10 or 15 years ago, making sure we kept the bad people out and good people in. We also now have to think about, from a cybersecurity perspective, keeping the bad people out. And the way that we do that now is with enhanced encryption. So when HID releases a new panel and you go, wow, there was 15 years between EP and LP, and now there was only 6 years between LP and MP. Well, this is why. Because the threat vectors change, the cybersecurity landscape changes, and HID needs to be able to provide a product that is going to be viable for many more years to come. And I think MP solves that, but we'll talk more about that in a bit.
Yeah, definitely MP solves it. So that's your baseline. This is how the key things about encryption. It's AES encryption and TLS. And TLS is just the mechanism to share the data. So using that, I think we can probably get into the best practices along every step of that way. And I think we probably start with the credential.
Yes, moving into the end-to-end security components, looking at credentials, I've got a few things to ask about that. But first of all, what are the secure and insecure card technologies that are available to us?
Okay.
I've got two. You go, Phil.
Oh, okay.
We'll see if we match.
Yeah, there's so many. Well, where I really want to start here is, like, yes, there are insecure credentials, credentials with encryption keys that may have been hacked or cracked or something like this. So you may be thinking about, like, MyFair Classic or easily clonable, or iClass, legacy iClass that has a vulnerability. So these were platforms that were built with encryption in mind, but that those encryption standards are old, they are legacy, and so those things are no longer secure. It would be like saying, oh, I hacked a Windows 98 computer. Congratulations. Can you try it in Windows 11? Yeah. But there's also products out there that were never designed to be encrypted. And I'm talking about specifically around procs, right? 125 kilohertz procs cards. People like to demonize them to some degree. I am probably guilty of this myself. But the reality is, think of a procs card like a VHS tape. A VHS tape was never designed to not be recorded to or over recorded. You could just pop it in your VCR and hit record and record onto that tape, versus a Blu-ray, for example, that has all sorts of copyright protection on it. So, a procs card was never actually designed to be secure. It was super secure at the time when it was released in the 90s, because who had the ability to clone a procs card? Nobody. But as the threat landscape changes, and now, and I know Jeremy's going to talk about this more in a bit, you can go on Amazon or eBay and buy a pretty cheap cloning device, or the Flipper Zero, and be able to clone procs cards with relative ease. The threat landscape has changed, so we need to go to a more secure type of card technology. But Jeremy, what do you want to add there?
If you had to go to a secure card technology, there's two that I can think of that are secure, that can't be cloned today. Do you agree? What are those two?
I would say, well, actually, I'll throw a third one.
You'll throw a third one. Okay.
And only because it's like brand new. But the two that I'm sure you're thinking of are HID CIOS and MyFair DesFire EV3. Am I correct?
You're correct.
Good. And then the third one I'm going to throw in there is a new credential standard that I actually just recently wrote a newsletter on LinkedIn about, called Aliro. So Aliro is a new standard that incorporates PKI. So, like the same thing we were talking about with TLS, it actually brings that encryption standard into the physical credential as well. It is a brand new, like it was just ratified like a month ago. But that's sort of like the future evolution of credential technology from a security perspective.
Yeah. Today, I would say what's readily available is HID CIOS and DesFire EV3. Mobile is, why not talk about mobile, right? Phil always talk about mobile. Mobile 100%. Uses secure credential technologies under the hood.
Yeah, and the one thing that I'll say there, and I love this slide because it really shows the credential continuum. From a mobile access perspective, from an HID perspective, of course. It's a COS card that lives either in an app or in the wallet of your phone. So it's the same secure credential technology that you might be carrying around with you as a plastic card. We've taken that secure credential and then made it even more secure by putting it onto your phone. So that is like as secure could get. We can have a whole conversation about why mobile credentials are more secure than a physical card, but follow me on LinkedIn. You'll learn more.
Okay. Well, so let's talk a bit about the secure card formats, because as we all know, there's different formats that can be used in each of these cards. And so what should we be thinking about along those lines?
Yeah, so on the format side, so we have the technology like procs or COS, and then there's got to be data on the card. So the format is really just the data. It's your badge ID, it's your facility code, and the format is just a template so we know what bits to look at to calculate your badge ID. Like if I look at this 26-bit example, I can see the starting bit for where my badge ID is. And then this is in binary, I can convert that to a decimal number and I know the badge ID. So formats come in all shapes and sizes. 26-bit is like the common one that everyone's heard of, but it could be 37, 42, 64. It could have names
200 in the government space.
In the government space, yeah, exactly. We put names on it like Corp 1000, which happens to be a 35 or a 48-bit number. But all it is we're going to dedicate some of those bits, however many, to the facility code. And we're going to dedicate other bits to the badge ID. Now, it's just data, but there is some protections on how do we protect that data. Now, the technology is doing the encryption piece, but there's other things like restricted and tracked formats. And Phil, do you want to maybe touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I want to say here also is, and this is something that got taught to me when I first started working for HID, because I feel like formats is one of those things that people know but don't necessarily understand all the time what they are. Think of a card format or think of the card itself. So I have one of these cool transparent cards. If you'd like to get one of these, leave me a comment down below. I can ship one to you. But this card is just a container. It's a bucket. This bucket holds on one of these radios in here all those ones and zeros that Jeremy has up there. So it could be 26 of them, it could be 48 of them, it could be 200 of them, but it is just a container for that information. And going back to the earlier conversation about secure versus insecure, if it's insecure and I can copy whatever is on this card and then copy it to a flipper zero or to another key fob or something like that, the access control system, the reader that's on the door, doesn't know if this is a card or a mobile device or a flipper zero or a key fob. It just says, oh, I see 26 ones and zeros that happens to match the cardholder profile for Phil Coppola. Beep, click, and I walk through the door. So the most common format out there is H10301. This is a term that anybody that's ever bought an HID card should know like verbatim. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I go, H10301. And all H10301 is a 26-bit format, so 26 ones and zeros like Jeremy has up on the screen here. But it's not tracked and it is not managed, meaning you can have up to, I want to say, let's just call it 69,000 or 70,000 unique card numbers in an H10301 format. And then you can have around 254 facility codes. So that sounds like a big number. That's millions of card numbers. The reality, though, is when you order H10301 or you go to your distributor and they just have a box of HID cards, they're probably H10301, facility code 1, card number 1 or card number 100. And what happens is you get a lot of duplicates out there. So it is not uncommon to have somebody with their own card that has facility code 1, card number 100, use that same card on somebody else's access control system and get access granted because it's it's the same card number. Again, the access control system doesn't know the difference here. That's where corporate 1000 comes in. And as a best practice, this is what HID considers to be the absolute best practice for card formats, which is you get your own dedicated card format as an end user organization. So company XYZ, once they have 10,000 employees, they get their own facility code, custom facility code, their own custom card number range. Typically, these bit structures are around 48 bits, so it's billions of potential card numbers. They'll never burn through them. And then the card number ranges are completely tracked and managed by HID. So when you have to order card number, you burn through your first 10,000 cards and you want to order another block of 1,000, you don't have to think, oh, what was the last card number that I used? What's my facility code?
You just say, give me the next available that I've never used before. And
exactly.
It takes all the guesswork out of it.
Not only is that more convenient from an ordering perspective, but now it's more secure because there is or again, highly, highly, highly improbable that HID has duplicated your same facility code and bit structure for some other organization. It's like taking your risk level from 100 down to 1. Like, could it happen? Theoretically, maybe, but in practice, highly improbable.
And then on top of that, we could use standard keys or elite keys. Can you talk about those?
What a segue!
What a segue!
Brilliantly done.
Segue.
Okay. You read my mind.
Yeah. Jeremy, you want to take this one?
Yeah. So look, it's as simple as this. So we have the technology, let's say CIOS. We have the data on the card, like Corp 1000 or 26-bit, but then we need to encrypt that data. And that encryption key, this is AES encryption. So that encryption key is on the card and it's on the reader. So there are keys that are just sort of default. So if you buy or pick a reader up off a shelf at distribution, it just has like the default normalized keys. Or you could have custom keys specific to you. So if you have custom keys that are specific to you, those are called elite keys. And what that looks like in the field is, let's say I have a card with my elite key and the reader has my elite key, and Phil has another card with a different encryption key. If he takes his card to my reader, it's not going to beep. It's not going to attempt to pull the data because it can't talk. It doesn't have the right encryption keys to communicate. So if you want to protect yourself, best practice is pick a technology that's secure, like CIOS or Desfire. Pick a format that can't be duplicated through the factory process, and that's tracked and unique to you. So that's like Corp 1000. And then pick an encryption key that is also unique to you. So you're really making it so the communication's secure, the data is secure, and the encryption of the data is also unique and secure to you.
So, and in light of all that, oh, sorry, Phil, you go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of things there. First thing is going back to earlier in the conversation where we were talking about like legacy iClass, for example, as being insecure. The insecure piece of it is the standard key that was shipped with these older readers became vulnerable. In other words, somebody figured out how to get that key set.
They knew the key.
Yeah. They knew the key, basically. So they were able to, let me take it into the mind of a hacker, right, for a second. Okay, I want to get into your facility. I've decrypted. I know you have legacy iClass, and I know you don't have an elite key. I know you're just using the standard legacy iClass key that came standard with this reader. I know that you use H10301 format on your card. And so what I can do is I can just start brute forcing without like hacking your network or cloning a card. I can just brute force. If I just know those two things are true, you use H10301 and you use a standard legacy key that's vulnerable. If that same end user organization was still using these older readers, but they had an elite key for their legacy iClass system, and they used a corporate 1000, they are almost as secure as somebody that's using a Signo reader and a CIOS card.
Yeah, it becomes like uniqueness for the end user on the encryption key at that point. If nobody knows what your key is, it's really hard to imitate somebody or get their information if you don't know the encryption keys.
Absolutely.
So what should we worry about today as regards cloning then, in light of all of these security features that we have, all these variables?
I think for me that, and by the way, how dare you, Jeremy, not mention the mob key as part of all of this? Well, we'll talk about that. For me, though, it's all about turning off the prox radio inside of your readers. So the reason I say that is, again, going back to physical cards, for a good long time, people were using prox. It's fine. It worked for them. Over the course of time, they've evolved to maybe iClass or CIOS or DesFire EV3, so a more secure physical credential. But they left the prox radio on the readers. Now, remember what I said earlier. A card is just a container for ones and zeros. So if you know the ones and zeros that exist on a CIOS card or a DesFire EV3 card, in other words, if you know what their bit structure is and what their potential card number range is, you could write that same information to a prox card and present it to that reader. If the prox radio is still turned on, you're going to get beep click and you're going to go through the door, because again, the panel, the software, the reader, it doesn't know what container you've brought with you. It just says, oh, I see a card number. Does it match what's in my database? Yes. Okay. Go through the door. So to me, the best thing that folks can do, especially as they're migrating to more advanced credential technologies, whether that's DesFire, CIOS, or mobile, is you got to turn off prox as soon as you can. As soon as that last prox card is out of commission, you got to turn off the prox radios.
Yeah, and for me, it comes down, I think, probably the most, and I agree with Phil that turning prox off is critical to this. But for me, if you had to pick one thing of this best practice, use a technology that can't be cloned, because there are cloners out there that are readily available. You can buy them on Amazon or anywhere online. Here's some that you can go to, I don't know, Walmart and go to a kiosk and clone your prox badge, or you can get a Flipper Zero and break the encryption keys of MyFair classic cards. There are so many readily available tools to clone, and if you're using DesFire EV3 or CIOS, these do not allow for that to happen. There's a funny story. I was driving through Florida, and there was this car that we saw in Florida, and yeah, show that, Rob. So this guy's driving around. It's called thatfobguy.com, and he's like, we'll copy your keys, and he puts like government and military on there. And that to me is just terrifying, that this has become so normalized that, God, I hope the police would pull him over and like, why are you pickpocketing people, sir? But he's
the scariest business on that list there is dungeons.
Dungeons. Yeah. As long as there's no dragons, we're okay. But crazy that this stuff exists. But if you use a secure technology, that eliminates this from happening.
Yeah, and I'll throw into that a couple of other places. Like go to any Home Depot or Lowe's now. Go to your local mall. There's those Copy Me kiosks. They work on legacy credential technologies that are utilizing the standard key or the no key format that was available for those credentials at that time. So if you're distributing prox cards, to me today, if you're worried about high security, because there are some applications, by the way, where a prox card is just fine. But if you're worried about high security and you're protecting, sizable assets, you don't want to be distributing a card that anybody could literally go to a kiosk at the mall and copy like a brass key. Like literally, that is exactly what that has become now. And one other point here that I'd like to reference, because Jeremy and I are pretty active in the Reddit access control community. And there's a pretty robust community there. If you're not on Reddit, I highly recommend you go there, because it's really valuable information gets shared there. But there's also a fairly active Flipper Zero communities, which I'm like, I kind of like, I watch it happen on the side. I don't really comment, but at least once a week, somebody will be like, oh, I was able to copy my old card, but I can't copy my new card to my Flipper Zero. What's up? And people would basically just say, well, if it's a CIOS card or a Desfire EV3 card, it can't be copied with a Flipper Zero. So you take that threat vector just right off the table.
Yep.
And so we've been looking at, talking mainly about cards, physical cards at the moment. But when you move to mobile, what other best practices should we consider when deploying mobile as opposed to the physical card?
You know, Ian, I was getting nervous there that nobody was going to say mobile. Okay, so we talked quite a bit about encryption keys. We talked quite a bit about formats. Again, like I said earlier, a mobile credential in the HID universe, and by the way, this is true for our competitors as well, that it's not a CIOS card that lives on our competitor's credential. It's most likely a Desfire credential that lives in the wallet or the app of our competitor products. In the HID world, it's a CIOS card that lives inside of the phone, whether it's in an app or in a wallet. But remember, it's still just a container for that credential information. And so the same type of security best practices that we're considering for physical cards, we should also be thinking along those same lines for mobile. Now, the beauty part with mobile is that there's even more security built around things like Bluetooth and things like NFC. So you might say to yourself, oh, Bluetooth, that's not secure. That's an open protocol. Anybody can copy that. True. But what HID has done here is when we transmit a credential from the app to the reader over Bluetooth, that whole session is encrypted with AES 128. So, and that encrypted session is only valid for one transaction that takes about 200 milliseconds to complete. So could I be sitting there with some sort of a packet sniffer and see the traffic that leaves your phone to the reader, capture that, and then replay it? Yeah, but by the time you do that, nothing's going to happen because the transaction's done and your session key is expired. So
I'm going to change my statement where I said it's improbable. That sounds pretty impossible, actually.
It's pretty,
that one's
impossible. Yeah, but you know, I will still get people to argue with me like, oh, it's yes. Could you do it? I mean, everything would have to happen really, really right in order for that to occur. You'd have to get
really lucky, really lucky.
Yeah, exactly. So far more likely that somebody just kicks down your door, by the way. So yeah. That's pretty much easier at that point. NFC standing for near field communication. This is what is typically used in wallet, Apple Wallet, Google Wallet, Samsung Wallet. The read distance for NFC, the N standing for near, you have to be right on top of the reader. If anybody here has used Apple Pay, Google Pay, if you've paid for stuff with your phone, you know you have to be right on top of the payment terminal. The same is true for mobile access. And the transaction speed is faster. So that whole process is encrypted again with AES 128, but now instead of transmitting maybe 2 or 3 feet, you're transmitting 1 inch away from the reader. So from a security perspective, nothing's going to beat that, right? Now, when we talk about card formats and encryption, HID Mobile Access, the app, can also leverage something called a mob key. So whereas before we have the standard key with a physical card and an elite key for a physical card, elite key being the best practice, in mobile access, you can use the CIOS key, the key that comes with any HID reader. So literally, and by the way, I just posted a video about this on LinkedIn where I was at ISC West and I was just testing my mobile credential across readers that didn't have an encryption key on it, and it worked across all those readers. Fantastic, because now you can very rapidly deploy mobile and still take advantage of the AES 128 encryption that happens between the phone and the reader. But if you wanted to make it even more secure, you can put what's called a mob key on the reader. Now that mob key just like an elite key lives on the credential, lives on the reader. Those two things have to match before then the AES 128 encryption kicks in. So that's even more secure. And then finally, a note on formats. Use whatever format you want. Again, it's a CIOS card. So you want to use H10301, use H10301 or 02 or 05 or 07. Or, again, best practice would be corporate 1000. You completely take the duplication off the table because, again, the credential, the phone is just a container of information. So if you choose H10301, card number 1, facility code 1, and you left your prox radio on your Signo reader, there is a possibility that somebody could take that same card data and just tap it using prox. So turn off prox, get yourself a corporate 1000, and use a mob key if for like the most secure type of implementation.
Yes, and that moves us on to readers. And as you said a couple of times now, these downgrade attacks are the real concern if you leave on the prox functionality or anything like that. But let's talk about how the reader communicates with the controller. I mean, the standards that we all know about are vegan and OSDP. Can we talk about those two and what the risks and benefits are of each of those?
Yeah, this one's my baby. This is what my passion is OSDP. So look, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're using encryption from the reader to the controller. And the only way to do that is through a protocol called OSDP Secure Channel. And OSDP stands for Open Supervised Device Protocol. And then Secure Channel just means encryption. So with Wiegand data, Wiegand is all plain text. There's no encryption. There's no supervision. It's one-way communication from the reader to the controller. So you swipe your badge, the reader's going to pull off your card format data, those zeros and ones, and it's going to pass it along the line. And if somebody's sniffing that line, they can capture those zeros and ones, and they can replay that. OSDP prevents that because we encrypt that communication. So they can't capture it, they can't replay it, and they can't see what the data is. So there's actually a video. I think this video describes it best. Rob, could we roll that? And they'll describe what they're doing, and I think it'll make sense.
Just how easy is it to hack into a Wiegand-style access control system? Well, let's take a look. What we have here is a hacker coming in with just a screwdriver to remove the card reader off the wall. This is a Wiegand-style card reader, so we've got a few wires. He's going to grab 4 of them, and he's going to punch it down onto a little device known as an ESP key. This device can be purchased online for $79, so this is not something that you have to worry could only happen with a state actor. Really, anyone with very low-cost tools and devices is able to do this. What you just saw was Bobak punching down these 4 conductors onto the existing wiring and then stuffing the card reader back into the wall. When he's done, this device is going to then communicate with his phone. Next up, we'll see an authorized user scanning a real badge and being able to get into it. The badge data was captured. And now the hacker can come back at any time later, pull out his phone, go to that same interface, replay that same badge data that was captured at first, and now they think he's authorized to get in.
So yeah, so for $79, and you can find this online, ESP key, for $79, somebody can buy that little device, install it in about a minute. It lives behind the reader. Nobody knows it's there. And then it broadcasts Wi-Fi, so you connect to it on your phone, and then you can do replay attacks. And all it's doing is resending those zeros and ones from that ESP key to the controller. So OSDP Secure Channel prevents that from happening. And really, best practice, we should be using OSDP Secure Channel 100% of the time. It's been around, it's proven, it's an international standard. It's not just like something that somebody made up in their garage. It's tested, it's updated all the time. So as a best practice, OSDP Secure Channel every single time.
Okay. And other controllers speaking to other controllers over RS-485, we want that encrypted as well?
Yeah, and on the Mercury side, this gets pretty easy because it's sort of just automatic. If you have a bunch of older controllers, let's say the green controllers, getting AES communication between the controllers on that RS-485 line is kind of hard. But anything new that you buy, it's all baked in and built that way. So you deploy it and you're getting AES 256 right away. So I think probably the easiest way to describe it, and this goes for OSDP, it goes for TLS, it goes for the AES encryption between the boards. If your controllers, and again, specific to Mercury, if your controllers are green, you're not going to be able to do OSDP secure channel. You're not going to be able to do TLS 1.3. You're not going to get the AES encryption between the controllers. But if your controllers have been produced in the last, 10 plus years, then you can do OSDP secure channel. You get TLS 1.3, and you get the encryption between the boards automatically.
Okay.
Can I ask two questions? Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't mean to moderate here, but first question is, Jeremy, and this is one that we get literally all the time. Can I reuse my existing wire? Because people hear, OSDP, that's a new wiring standard. So therefore, I must rip out all of my existing wire and replace all that wire, which, as we all know, is the most expensive part.
Yeah, I'll say this. Stop saying that. We get that question every time we talk about OSDP. So look, here's how it actually works. So OSDP is an RS-45 communication protocol. If you're wiring RS-45, and I'm going to say should a lot, it should be a cable that has an overall shield. It should be a twisted pair cable. It should be 120 ohm. You should put resistance at both far ends. You should be following all the rules of RS-45. Your current readers that you have installed today, they're wired Wiegand, so it's not a twisted pair. It probably doesn't have an overall shield. You don't have resistance. You're not doing any of those things. So the reason why they say RS-45 should follow these best practices, it's because RS-45 can go 4,000 feet. And if you're going 4,000 feet, hell, if you're going 1,000 feet, yeah, you should be using the right cable. But nobody's wiring their Wiegand readers 1,000 feet. They're wiring like 150, maybe 300 most. And at those distances, reusing your Wiegand wiring gives you really great signal strength. Even with a lot of noise, the controller can understand the data and it just works. So does it meet the spec reusing Wiegand wiring? No, it doesn't. Does it work? 99% of the time. And there's tools that you can use to test. Cypress makes a really nice cable tester that will pass OSDP information and tell you if there's any packet loss. So don't let the cabling and some of these fears that happen, don't let that limit you from your OSDP adoption. I would say if you have newer readers and newer controllers, you can likely just flip the switch and say talk OSDP instead of Wiegand and move on with your life, and you get that encryption.
Yeah, and it's not like you're going to lose any capability, right? It's like, I used Wiegand wire, so I don't get this feature. No, it's RS-45, so it's going to pass the data just fine.
And you get more. You get supervision, so you know if somebody cut the wire, if the reader got struck by lightning. You get the tamper. If somebody starts unscrewing the reader from the wall, you'll get a message in your access control system. So you get so much more. And you really don't have to do any work. So
and not just from a security perspective, but now from a convenience perspective too, with OSDP, because it's data transfer, right? We're not just sending random ones and zeros. Now we're sending data. So theoretically, you can, not theoretically, in practice, you can update your readers centrally.
Yeah, so let's talk about like how this could impact mobile adoption, because I think you talked a little bit about the mob key.
Yeah.
So let's say a customer wants to go mobile. They want their own mob key for that extra layer of security. They have to get that mob key to the reader somehow. So traditionally, they would manually go to every single reader. They would connect to the reader with an app on their phone, Reader Manager, and they would make that update one by one by one, sneakernet style, walking to every reader. With OSDP, and if you have the latest and greatest controllers, then you can push that mob key to your readers over the OSDP wire. And that can save you, I don't know, a lot of time if you need to make updates. And you can do firmware updates through OSDP as well. So if HID, I think we release firmware roughly around 2 times a year. this now enables you to stay current on your firmware, which you should, because we're so much more in this IoT world where firmware updates add security features, and we should be staying current on our firmware, and OSDP simplifies that.
Well, and that's the other side of the coin that I wanted to talk about here. So first of all, HID Link, LINQ, is a product that is available from HID now that will allow you to centrally manage your readers so long as you're wired for OSDP and talking to a Mercury panel, a red or a black Mercury panel. You could do all this centralized management like what we're talking about. But what I really want to bear down on here is something that going back to something I said way earlier in this conversation about access control used to be about physically keeping the bad people out and the good people in. It has become more of a concern from an end user perspective and their IT departments about keeping the bad people out from a cyber perspective. If you look at some of the largest breaches in history, a lot of these breaches come from, the hacker was able to get through some ancient HVAC controller that was left insecure, and then they were able to communicate back and get into the network and then steal millions of dollars worth of intellectual property. The reader, the credential, the panel, the software that you're talking to, these are all IT risk now. And so the best practice when we're starting to talk to end users, or if you're an end user listening to this, you have to involve your IT security folks in these situations, because if they found out that you're running a firmware from 10 years ago, or you're not using encryption on your readers or on your physical cards, these are things that they probably don't know about because they're not physical security experts, but they do know that these systems impact their systems. So if you're concerned about, we got to do a rewire for Weekend, or we've got to turn on OSDP, that's going to be a challenge, or we've got to update this firmware, man, that's going to take a long time. I would ask you to think about what the risk is from a monetary value if the access control system was the system that was used to breach a firewall and release potentially millions of dollars of intellectual property, right? This is no longer just about keeping people out.
It's millions of dollars. I mean, the average cyber breach these days is $10+ million. And what I always say is, don't let access control be the reason for your next cyber breach. Like, let it be an HVAC system. Let it be somebody else's problem, because I don't want to get fired because the system that I put in my building had holes in it where somebody got in, accessed the network, stole information, installed malware, did some sort of attack that jeopardized my system and the longevity of my company. So if you do these things, and maybe we do rapid fires quick, we're going to see best practice. So if people are recording, here's your time. So best practice on the credential technology, what would you say?
Yeah.
Best practice for credential technology, mobile, and probably either app or wallet. So long as you're using a mob key, that would be the best practice in my opinion.
And I know we're running out of time. But it's worth mentioning another couple of security aspects of the controller: data at rest and the 802.1x authentication support, and secure boot, which again help prevent any of these cyber attacks.
Yeah, I mean, these are things that are built into the platform. So we make sure that the firmware is up to date, that the network communication through 802.1x is secure, and that any data living on the controller, that's all encrypted as well. So I think if we talk through just a quick recap. So Phil, you said mobile on that, but I would say CIOS and DesFire is the technology for the card. If Correct. You had a best practice for your card format, what would you pick?
Corporate 1000.
And
which,
then best,
which by the way is free if you get mobile.
You really want them to do mobile. Yeah,
I'm just
I can
saying.
tell. You can tell. If we have a best practice around encryption keys for the cards, it would be Elite
Key, Elite, and then Mob in the mobile world.
in the mobile world. If we wanted best practice on how the readers communicate, that would be OSTP secure channel. And then for best practices on how the controllers communicate over the network, that would be TLS 1.3. And then there's those other things like secure boot and 802.1x. But if you follow those 5 or 6 different things, then you can secure your environment and you won't be the reason for the next cyber breach.
Exactly. Or at the very least, if God forbid a cyber breach were to happen, you could say, look, I
did everything
the best
right.
practices to a T, and
right.
this guy got lucky, right? Like, but you don't want to be like, oh, we had a breach and my boards are green, my wire is weakened, and I'm using prox cards on prox only readers. Well, in 2026, you're kind of asking for it a little bit. And look, I don't want to minimize the fact that these types of system upgrades are expensive. It's not a cheap undertaking. However, to the point that I think Jeremy and I have drilled home, one breach is enough to put most companies in this country out of business. You don't want to do that. You don't want to risk that. Really, really do your best to insulate yourself. And if you want to start having this conversation, that's where Jeremy and I come in. Engage with us. You can connect with us, obviously, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, wherever, whatever popular social media platform you're on. But we have teams of people that are dedicated to help you think about a migration strategy. Because if you are legitimately on an SCP panel over Wiegand to prox only readers and prox cards, it's going to be a continuum. It's going to be an effort to get you to current. But if you don't know where to start, that's sometimes it's paralysis through analysis, and that's really where we can help.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, gentlemen, we are out of time. We've gone through a lot of information.
We've said it
all. It just
all.
means that we can come back and do more of this. Which
I think
I'm sure
we have
we will. Yeah, absolutely. There's so much to go into. But listen, thank you ever so much. Thanks to everyone that's been watching. We had some great comments coming in from various people around the world saying there's loads of great information and we're doing great work. So listen, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you've been able to take something away. If you do have a question, we've had no questions come in on the chat today, but if you do have a question that you think of after the event, or maybe you say as you're watching on catch up, then please do send it in to training@hidglobal.com, and if one of the training team can answer it, they will. If not, we'll pass it on to either Jeremy or Phil, or you can follow these guys on the various platforms that they mentioned. There's Reddit and there's LinkedIn. You can pop these questions, and they are, I know Phil is always answering people's questions. Really, really helpful stuff, but you get it all there. Of course, if you want to learn more about a lot of the technologies and the solutions that HID provides, both in terms of credentials, mobile, readers, controllers, the whole package, then go over to hidglobal.com/training and sign up for the HID Academy Learning Center, where you've got literally hundreds of training modules, training videos, and all sorts of things that will help you learn about the products and the solutions. They're all continuously updated. So as these technologies move along, as we've discussed, we do update and make sure that everything is there for you. So, gentlemen, thank you once again for your time and for your wonderful information. And I hope everyone's been able to take something away from this. We will be back. I think we're going to be back in May with I believe it's going to be a Fargo secure issuance, card issuance type affair, but we'll send more details out as we get those. Of course, the best way to keep up with that is to make sure you subscribe to this channel and to join our LinkedIn page, and you'll get information about all of that in your inbox as and when it happens. So Iain, Jeremy, Phil, thank you so much for your time today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks to everyone that's been watching. We'll see you again next time. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.